She smiled like she'd spent years learning how to hide her heart. Quiet, almost sad. I didn't know then that every glance, every silence between us, was her way of trying not to fall for me. And maybe mine was pretending I wasn't already falling for her. I first saw her on a late Thursday afternoon, the kind of day that feels half asleep when sunlight stretches long across the wooden floorboards and the whole world moves a little slower. The art class had just started, a mix of chatter and the faint scent of turpentine. I wasn't supposed to be there. I'd signed up last minute, needing a distraction more than inspiration. Then she walked in. She didn't command the room the way people usually do when they know they're beautiful. Her presence was quieter, like music you almost miss until you really start listening. She wore a loose cream blouse, sleeves rolled just enough to show slender wrists smudged faintly with paint. Her hair was tied back, strands escaping in soft curls. There was a steadiness to her, a kind of grace that didn't try to be seen. When she spoke, her voice was low and unhurried. Art, she said, isn't about getting it right. It's about being honest. I don't know why that stayed with me. Maybe because honesty felt like something I hadn't seen much of lately. I tried to focus on my painting, but I kept finding my eyes drifting toward her. She moved through the room like she belonged to a quieter rhythm than the rest of us. When she stopped beside me, I didn't even realize until her shadow touched the edge of my canvas. "You're pressing too hard," she said gently. "Let the brush breathe." Her hand came forward, hesitant at first, and then her fingers brushed against mine as she guided my grip. It was the lightest touch, but it sent a current through me, small and uninvited. Her hand was warm, steady. She smelled faintly of rain and coffee. When she drew back, she smiled, quiet, thoughtful, and said, "Better." I remember standing there, trying to look composed while my heart felt like it had skipped a line in the rhythm. She went on helping others, and I watched how everyone seemed drawn to her calm. There was kindness in the way she looked at people, but something else too. A distance. Like her eyes could see beauty, but never quite let it in. After class, I lingered longer than I meant to, pretending to clean brushes I didn't use. She was packing up her things, humming softly, unaware that I was still there. The evening light fell across her face, and for a moment, I saw it, the sadness behind her calm. Not loud, not broken, just quiet, like something she'd learned to live with. That night, walking home with the scent of paint still on my hands, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Not in the way you think about someone you want, more like someone you recognize. Like she carried something you felt too, but never said out loud. I didn't know her name yet, but I knew her silence spoke louder than most people's words. I started staying after class without meaning to. At first, it was innocent, cleaning brushes, helping rearrange easels, anything to justify the extra minutes in her presence. But eventually, it wasn't about excuses. It was about the way she made silence feel safe. She talked more when most of the students had left. Her voice would soften, words unhurried, as if she spoke only when something truly needed to be said. I remember one evening in particular, the golden light fading through the tall windows, long shadows stretching across the studio floor. The air smelled of linseed oil and fading rain. She sat on the edge of a wooden table, legs crossed, a mug of tea in her hands. "You're different from the others," she said, not looking at me. "You listen." I laughed quietly. Maybe I just don't have anything worth saying. She smiled, that same quiet, almost sad smile, and shook her head. People who say less usually mean more. That was her way. She never asked directly, never demanded to be understood, yet somehow always left you wanting to know more. We started talking about the things that didn't fit neatly into small talk. Books, music, the strange ache of growing older and still feeling young inside. She spoke of art not as technique, but as memory. "Every painting," she said once, "is a confession, even when you don't mean it to be." I remember how her eyes glinted when she said it, deep brown, framed by faint lines that made her look even more real. When she caught me watching, she looked away quickly, busying herself with paint tubes. I began to notice small things. The way she always lingered before turning off the lights, like saying goodbye to a place that understood her. how she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when avoiding a question, how she sometimes paused mid-sentence, as if something inside her tightened before she could finish. One evening, she asked, "Do you ever feel like you're pretending to be fine when you're not?" It was such an ordinary question, but the way she said it made it feel like a confession. "Yeah," I answered quietly. "All the time." Her eyes met mine then, for longer than before. There was no pity in them, only recognition. The kind that unsettles you because it feels too honest. That conversation stayed with me for days. It wasn't what she said, it was the way her voice softened, the way she seemed relieved that someone didn't look away. I began realizing that maybe her calm wasn't peace. Maybe it was armor. After class, as we locked up together, I caught a glimpse of her reflection in the glass door, tired, graceful, and somewhere far away in thought. She turned to me and smiled faintly, but her eyes said she was somewhere else entirely. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her words echoed like a song I didn't know the ending to. "Do you ever feel like you're pretending to be fine when you're not?" And the truth was, I never wanted to stop pretending more than I did when she asked me that. It had been raining since morning, a steady, patient rain that blurred the edges of everything. Most of the students had left early, but she stayed behind, tidying brushes that were already clean. I offered to help, mostly because I didn't want to leave either. The studio felt different that evening. The usual hum of conversation was gone. Only the sound of rain tapping softly against the tall windows filled the silence. The city outside looked like a watercolor, hazy, softened by mist. Inside, the light was dim, golden, like the last warm breath before night. She was quieter than usual, her movements slower. When she finally spoke, her voice carried that same stillness the rain had, calm, but heavy underneath. "Do you ever get tired of being strong?" she asked, not looking at me. I hesitated, then nodded. "More than I'll admit." She gave a small smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. "I think I forgot what it's like to not have to be." Something in her tone made me stop what I was doing. She wasn't asking for comfort. She was just letting the truth out, carefully, as if testing whether the air could hold it. She told me then, quietly, like she wasn't sure she should, about the years she spent trying to hold everything together after her marriage ended. About how silence had become easier than disappointment. How people thought strength looked like composure, when really it was just exhaustion. Her words weren't dramatic. They were real. And in that still room, with the smell of rain and pain around us, I realized how much she'd been holding back every time she smiled. When she fell silent, I didn't know what to say. So I just made her tea black, no sugar, the way she liked it. My hands trembled slightly as I set it beside her. She looked up, eyes soft but uncertain. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she whispered. "Like what?" "Like you seem more than I want you to." Her voice broke a little on that last word. She tried to hide it with a laugh, but it didn't quite work. And before I could think of what to say, the thunder outside rolled low, and the light flickered. The moment stretched between us, quiet, fragile, alive. She took the cup, her fingers brushing mine again. This time, neither of us pulled away. The warmth of her touch felt heavier, full of things neither of us dared name. For a long moment, we just listened to the rain, to the silence, to the unspoken confession sitting between us. When she finally looked up, her eyes shimmered with something between apology and need. "I shouldn't tell you these things," she said softly. I smiled faintly. "Then don't tell me. Just stay." She didn't answer, but she didn't leave either. And that was the first night I realized some walls don't fall with noise. They fall quietly, one heartbeat at a time. After that night, something changed, not in what she said, but in what she didn't. Her laughter came less easily. Her eyes lingered less often. She began to build the distance back, carefully, like someone repairing a wall that had cracked. I could feel it every time we spoke. The warmth was still there, but it stayed behind glass. She stopped staying late after class. No more quiet tea, no more shared silences. She would smile, thank me for helping, then leave before the lights had even dimmed. I told myself not to take it personally, but I did. Every goodbye felt like losing something that hadn't even begun. One evening, I saw her standing outside the art gallery across town. She was dressed differently, more composed, almost formal, a long dark coat, hair pinned up. She was staring at a painting, a piece I recognized, two figures walking apart under a fading sky. I remember thinking how cruelly perfect that image was. I hesitated before approaching her. "Didn't think I'd see you here," I said softly. She turned, startled, then smiled that same careful smile. "I could say the same to you." We stood side by side, pretending to study the painting. The quiet between us was heavier than before. Not awkward, just full. She finally said, "It's beautiful, isn't it? The way they're close, but not touching. You can feel what they want, but they don't move toward it." Her voice wavered, barely perceptible, but I caught it. "Maybe they're scared," I said. She glanced at me, her eyes searching mine. "Or maybe they know it's better if they don't." There it was, the invisible line she'd drawn. I could almost see it between us, glowing faintly like tension caught in the air. I want to tell her that I didn't care what was better, that what was real didn't have to be right by anyone else's rules. But I didn't, because I understood. Instead, I asked quietly, "Is that what you think we are?" She sighed a small, trembling sound. "We're nothing that needs to be named." Her words stung, but I didn't look away. She looked tired, not physically, but the kind of tired that comes from fighting yourself. I saw it in the way her fingers clenched the strap of her purse, the way she kept her chin high, like she was holding back a truth that wanted to spill. "I miss talking to you," I said finally. Her eyes softened then, but her voice stayed steady. "It's better this way." She turned toward the door, her reflection flickering across the glass. The rain outside had started again, gentle and endless. And I just stood there, watching her walk away, realizing that sometimes love doesn't leave with anger or final words. Sometimes it just fades behind the sound of soft footsteps and closing doors. That night, the gallery lights went out one by one, and I stayed until the last painting disappeared into the dark, wondering if she even knew how much her absence hurt. It had been weeks since I'd last seen her. I told myself I was fine with the distance, that people drift, that some stories end quietly. But the truth was, she'd left an ache that followed me into every day. I'd stopped going to class for a while. It just wasn't the same without her presence softening the edges of the room. Then one evening, as I was cleaning my apartment, I found the old sketchbook she'd lent me. The one filled with her notes in the margins, little reminders about light, rhythm, emotion. I couldn't just keep it. I told myself that returning, it was the only reason I went to her house that night. But deep down, I knew I was lying. Her house was small and warmly lit, tucked at the end of a quiet street lined with jacaranda trees. I almost turned back twice before knocking. When the door opened, she looked surprised, not annoyed, not guarded, just startled to see me standing there with the sketchbook in hand. "I thought you might need this back," I said. She took it slowly, her fingers brushing mine. "You could have kept it," she whispered, but she didn't step aside. The rain had followed me again, soft, rhythmic. It filled the silence until she finally said, "Come in. You'll catch cold." Inside, the space smelled like jasmine tea and something faintly floral. There were paintings leaning against the walls, unfinished and beautiful. A record played quietly in the background, piano notes like distant thoughts. She moved differently here, softer, less guarded, as if the walls themselves protected her from the world she performed for. We talked at first about small things, her students, the rain, how life had been busy, but then the words began to falter. Every sentence lingered too long between us. "You didn't come back to class," she said finally. I met her gaze. "You stopped looking for me." The honesty of it hung in the air like a confession neither of us could take back. Her eyes glistened, though she tried to hide it. "It's not fair," she murmured. "To you, or to me. I keep pretending this doesn't matter." I took a step closer, my voice barely above a whisper. "And does it?" She closed her eyes for a long moment, then opened them, and the mask was gone. Her composure cracked in the softest way imaginable. "You have no idea," she said, her voice trembling, "how hard it is to pretend." She looked away, one hand pressed against her chest, as if trying to steady her breathing. I wanted to hold her, not out of desire, but out of the aching tenderness that comes from seeing someone finally stop running from themselves. So I didn't speak. I just reached for her hand. She didn't resist. The world outside blurred into rain and silence, and all that remained was the quiet truth between us, fragile, real, and finally unhidden. For the first time, she didn't hide behind her smile, and I didn't hide behind my patience. Morning came softly, with the pale hush that follows a night of too many words and too much honesty. The rain had stopped sometime before dawn, leaving the world washed clean, as if everything, even the air between us, had been reset. I woke on her couch, the faint scent of jasmine tea still lingering in the room. She was in the kitchen, barefoot, humming something low and unfamiliar. Her hair was loose now, falling over her shoulders in quiet waves. She looked different, not younger, not older, just lighter. "Coffee?" she asked when she noticed I was awake. "Always," I said, my voice still rough from sleep. She smiled, a small, unguarded thing, and poured 2 cups. The silence between us felt different now. Not tense, not cautious, just still, like we both knew that speaking too soon might break something fragile we weren't ready to lose. I watched her move, the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, how she cradled her cup with both hands. Everything she did carried this quiet grace, the kind that came from having endured and softened instead of hardened. When she finally sat across from me, she said, "Last night shouldn't have happened." Her words were calm, but her fingers trembled slightly against the mug. "I know," I said, "but I'm glad it did." She looked at me then, really looked. There was no mask this time, no wall. Just tired honesty in her eyes. "You don't understand what it costs to feel again after you've spent years teaching yourself not to." "Then let me help pay the cost," I said quietly. A faint laugh escaped her, more exhale than sound. "You're too young to talk like that." I smiled back. "Maybe, but I mean it." We didn't talk much after that. We just sat there, sipping coffee, watching the morning light crawl across the floor. She leaned back against the chair, eyes half closed, and for a moment, the world felt steady. No pretending, no fear. Just 2 people sharing the same quiet peace after a long, beautiful unraveling. When we finally stepped outside, the air smelled of wet leaves and sun-warmed stone. The city was still waking up, people walking dogs, a child's laughter echoing faintly down the street. She walked beside me, her hands in her coat pockets, close enough that our arms brushed from time to time. Neither of us pulled away. I didn't know what we were now. Not lovers, not just friends. But I knew it didn't need to be named. It was enough that she was there, walking next to me in the golden calm after everything had fallen apart and then somehow settled into place. As we reached the corner, she looked at me and smiled, really smiled. And for the first time, her eyes didn't carry that quiet sadness I'd first noticed. They carried something else, something lighter. Maybe not happiness, not yet, but something that looked a lot like hope. Months passed, quietly but not emptily. Life resumed its steady rhythm, the kind that doesn't erase what happened, but learns how to carry it. She went back to teaching her art classes. I returned, too, though it felt different now. Not as a student chasing meaning, but as someone who'd found it, in her and us, in everything we'd left unsaid. The studio hadn't changed much, but felt warmer somehow. The light that streamed through the windows seemed softer, the walls less lonely. She stood near the front, arranging canvases before class began. When she looked up and saw me, her smile appeared slowly, almost shyly, but this time it stayed. "You came back," she said, setting down a paintbrush. "I never really left," I replied. She shook her head, that familiar glint of amusement in her eyes. "You always did have a way of saying too much with too few words." Her voice carried none of the guarded hesitation I'd grown used to. She was calm now, not distant, not afraid, just present. There was still a hint of melancholy in her, but it was no longer the kind that consumed her. It was the kind that gives depth to joy. During class, she asked if I would help guide some of the new students. It was her way of including me, of saying stay, without having to say it out loud. As the hours passed, I watch her laugh easily, her eyes bright, her gestures free of restraint. At one point, she walked over to where I stood, quietly observing a student's work. Her shoulder brushed mine just slightly. "You've gotten better," she said softly. "Good teacher," I murmured. Her lips curved, but there was something in her gaze, a quiet knowing, the shared memory of nights we never talked about again, but never needed to. When the class ended, sunlight spilled through the windows in long, golden ribbons. Dust motes drifted lazily through the air, and she moved through them like something ethereal, light catching in her hair. I lingered by the window, sketching absent-mindedly. She came to stand beside me, arms folded, looking out at the fading afternoon. "It feels different now," she said. "Everything does. It's because you stopped pretending," I said, not as a question, but as a truth. She looked at me for a long moment. No hesitation this time. No half-smiles meant to disguise what she felt. Then she reached out and placed her hand over mine, steady and sure. "I'm glad you stayed," she whispered. Her hand was warm, her touch light but grounding. And as she smiled, really smiled, I realized something. This was the same woman who once spoke of strength as exhaustion, of calm as armor. But now her peace was real. Her joy was honest. Her smile finally reached her eyes. And in that moment, I understood, some people don't rescue you. They remind you you're still worth saving. And that's what love really is.